what we see in these passages is an anticipation for a greater deliverer. A deliverer who can deliver us not just from physical violence, but a deliverer who can give us eternal life, an eternal life that we, can never lose. And so what we see throughout the whole Old Testament is that this is the way we want to read it. We want to read the whole Old Testament through the lens of Jesus Christ. This is Fixed on Jesus. All right, everybody, welcome back to our Fixed on Jesus podcast. We are here together in our highly classified, completely secure compound. Enjoying the opportunity to record this podcast for you. And along with me, my name is Rich. I have Mark Johnson Jr. here with me.
Hey.
And Heather Corbitt, who's our production coordinator. Today what are we going to talk about today, Mark?
Well, I think first we're going to talk about baseball because
I
heard you're a big baseball
baseball.
fan.
I am a big baseball fan. But my team is really, really, really giving me a hard time right now.
What team is that?
Texas Rangers.
Oh, and you were at a game recently.
I was, yeah. They played the Diamondbacks last week. I was there, and they lost, which was so hard to see.
But I saw a photo of a baseball. Did you get hit a fly ball or a foul ball?
It was a foul ball, yep.
And you caught it?
In the technical sense, no, I did not catch it.
You have to elaborate.
Yeah, I was very disappointed.
It?
Like, I've been to a lot of baseball games, but I've never gotten a foul ball. And so at this game, I was with my friend Jim Hubeck. And
shout out to Jim Hubeck.
Yeah. And the ball, he was a right-handed batter. He hit the ball. He fouled the ball back. And I was sitting where I was sitting. The ball hit like 30 or 40 feet to my right above me. And so instead of bouncing straight out, it hit a part of the wall that made it bounce directly toward me. Now, the problem was, I'm thinking, so I wasn't paying attention. I mean, I was paying attention, but I wasn't thinking that ball was coming to me. And then it came to me, and it came right to my hands.
Wow.
And I dropped it.
So you're telling me a ball landed right in your hands.
It landed right in my hands, and I dropped it. I felt so horrible. I dropped it.
I'm not trying to make you feel worse, but.
No, I mean, it was like, this is my chance.
There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ.
Chance. This is my chance to catch it on the fly after it hits the wall, and I dropped it.
That happens.
It does. I just thought I was.
Your geometry isn't.
Well, I mean, you've never seen me play baseball. If
have you ever?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
If you had seen me play baseball, you'd be shocked that I dropped it because I don't drop anything.
So there's some people out there that are shocked that.
Yeah, they're hearing this and I can't believe it. There's no way he dropped that ball. It's true, folks.
Did Jim make fun of you?
Drop the ball. Jim?
Yeah.
No, Jim didn't make fun. He just smiled. Jim doesn't really. Jim, we need to work. Jim needs to make fun of more people.
Jim made fun of me once. Did I tell you? No. Can I give a story?
Sure.
Jim, I help with production coordinator stuff on a Sunday morning, and Jim was preaching.
Yep.
And he's like, "Hey, are you going to be here next week when I'm preaching?" And I was like, "No, I'm actually going to be out of town." And he goes, "Who's going to set my timer for my sermon?"
That's good. Yeah.
I didn't even realize he was making fun of me until later.
Yeah, well, that's good. A lot of people don't realize, but we do have a timer up on the podium for the sermon, don't we?
Yeah.
Just so that I don't go too long.
I'm the timer setter.
And you set the timer. Yeah. How long did you set it for?
For you or for him?
For all of us.
Between 37 and 40.
Yeah,
depending
exactly.
on. I ask every time.
Yeah, but it's 40. If anybody says more than 40, no.
Yeah.
Is the answer.
They're out of there.
Yeah, out of there.
Okay.
All right, what are we talking about today, Mark?
Other than baseball and Jim's funny jokes, we're talking about Jesus and Esther.
Jesus and Esther, yeah, right.
So you recently preached a sermon on Esther.
Yeah, we're doing a series at our church.
Yeah. You said God isn't mentioned in Esther.
Yeah, nowhere.
Right, which is, first of all, that stands out.
Yeah, it does.
But second of all...
It's bothered a lot of people over the years.
Yeah, I think we even talked about on one of the previous episodes that the early church wasn't sure if they were to include it.
Yeah, it was one of the questions. That was one of the reasons they had questions.
But that score's settled. But as far as... You brought up Jesus at the end of the sermon. So
I was just curious. And I will every week.
Okay. So I'm curious... how you make that connection, knowing that God isn't mentioned at all in that book.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a great question, because it's something we need to think about, because not just Jesus in Esther, but Jesus throughout all the Old Testament. Where is he? Is he there? How should we think about that? And part of the way I'm informed by that is when Jesus was on earth, after he rose from the dead, and he met the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. They were walking, because this was after the crucifixion. These two were just down in the dumps because Jesus died, and they didn't understand what was going on. And so they're walking. Jesus joins them. They don't recognize that it's Jesus, right? They don't see that it's him. And so he carries on this conversation. And they say, "Oh man, we're having a hard time because this Jesus of Nazareth, we thought he was going to be the Messiah and redeem Israel, but they killed him, and now our hopes died with him." And then he said, Jesus, although they don't know it's him, says this, Luke chapter 24, verse 25. "And he said to them," these are the two on the road to Emmaus, "O foolish ones, and slow to believe all the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." Now, when he references all the scriptures, there's no New Testament at this point. Mm-mm. So it's all of the Old Testament. He connects it to himself. And so in essence, what we see here is a picture of Jesus being the point of the whole Bible, even in the Old Testament. Now, sometimes there's a direct prophetic word about him, how he will come, where he will come from.
Like Isaiah?
Yeah, like Isaiah 53, how he'll die.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's in allusions or shadows or an echo that's going to be picked up later. And so what we see in Esther is no direct mention of God.
None.
But because it is a story it is a book in the Old Testament, we have to ask, how does this book anticipate the need for Jesus, or how does this book foreshadow the coming of Jesus? Now, we can see in Esther that both Mordecai and Esther are the heroes of our book that end up working to deliver the Jews, right? The Jews in Persia are going to be delivered by Esther and Mordecai, by Esther's heroism in chapter 4 when she goes before the king. But we see throughout the book of Esther that Esther is not the hero that is ideal, right? Mm. She sleeps with the king before she's married. He's uncircumcised. She doesn't adhere to the Jewish food laws. There's all kinds of different ways that she compromises herself and assimilates to the culture, right? Opposite of Daniel. But Jesus. So Esther is the deliverer of the Jews. Now, Jesus is also the deliverer of his people. Instead of just the Jews, Jesus is the deliverer for everyone who puts faith in him. So as we look at Esther as a deliverer or Mordecai as a deliverer, what we see here is two human deliverers that had their flaws.
Yeah.
When we see Jesus, we read those stories and we go, it's great that they did that, but their deliverance is not as thorough. Their deliverance is not as complete. Their deliverance doesn't even come from a place of perfection like Jesus does. And so what we see in these passages is an anticipation for a greater deliverer. Mm-hmm. A deliverer who can deliver us not just from physical violence, but a deliverer who can give us eternal life, an eternal life that we can never lose. And so what we see throughout the whole Old Testament is that this is the way we want to read it. We want to read the whole Old Testament through the lens of Jesus Christ. Mm. Otherwise, it just becomes a tale of moral stories. And, if we read Esther and say, well, ladies, don't be like Esther. Don't let a man treat you this way. That's a moralistic story that doesn't have any basis in Christianity. What we want to do is we want to say, how does this point to Christ? And so what we have is a better deliverer than Esther and Mordecai. Mordecai, whose name means Marduk man, essentially, is much. He helped deliver his people, but he's a poor copy of God the Son, who delivered us from the domain of darkness, who has freed us from the grip of death, who has ensured that we will be with God forever in all eternity.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing.
We want to read the whole Old Testament like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask. So you did already kind of touch on it. So Isaiah 54, very clear.
53, yeah.
53, excuse me.
Yeah.
Very clear that that's what they're pointing to, the Messiah, the Christ. And then a little, way less clear in Esther. What about the other Old Testament books? Are some of them more clear?
Yeah,
some
they
of them
all
harder?
point in different ways.
Yeah.
The first time we see this is in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where we have at the very beginning of the Bible, after the fall, the Lord promises that there's going to come one who will crush the serpent's head.
Yeah, can I read that verse?
Sure.
Genesis 3:15.
Yep.
I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. But he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel.
There it is. And so that's Jesus. That's a prophecy of Jesus coming to crush the head of Satan. And so we have that's a picture that we can look back at and go, okay, I understand now, in part what the cross was doing. It was Jesus is bruised. How is he bruised? He's bruised by dying on the cross.
Yeah.
But it's only a bruise because he rises again and lives forever. And what version is that says bruise?
ESV.
ESV. I thought it was crush. But
yeah.
And so here we are live trying to figure this out.
That's the life.
This is the way it is. Yeah, right.
Which version are you looking up?
I'm looking at the same one, ESV.
Oh, you think my Bible's broken over here?
No, it's not broken. It's right. He shall bruise your head. You shall bruise his heel. But Jesus crushes the head of Satan. And
that's the essence.
Yeah, that's the idea. He's going to throw him into the lake of fire and destroy him forever. But the reason he can do that is because he died and rose again.
Yeah.
He's the champion, and Satan has nothing on him anymore, or his people.
Satan has nothing on us.
Nope, that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
Well, I love that. It'd be a good point to wrap up here.
Well, until next time, if you have questions, please shoot us an email at production@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions.
That was close.
It's not Gmail?
We might have to make a Gmail just because you said that. But
it's Senator
Production
Gilbert.
at senatorgilbert.com.
Right. I'm just used to saying Gmail.
It's okay.
If you have suggestions, questions, comments, anything at all, email us at production@centeredgilbert.com, Mark.
Boom.
And we'll be glad to talk about those on air. Until next time.
Thank you, guys. God bless.